Hey guys, it's Michael. Today's your Thursday, May 21st stimulus check and stimulus package update. We have a lot of information to cover with the stock market, states reopening, unemployment data came out today, and the second stimulus package. So what we're going to do is we're first going to go over key financial and economic news, and then we're going to get into the second round of stimulus checks, and then finally a couple of important updates with the PPP loan. But before we get started, if you're interested in the stock market or how to make money in general, then please be sure to subscribe to my channel so you can be notified when new videos come out. Anyways, let's jump right into it and let's get into the key financial and economic news. So after a full week of stock market gains, every single day the stock market has been up. Stocks edged lower today pre-market because the unemployment and jobs report came out earlier today at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. And as we've seen every week for the last 8 weeks, the stock market has been down ahead of this unemployment and jobs report being released because the data has not been too good recently. According to Bloomberg, they were estimating that the new unemployment claims would be 2.5 million new unemployment claims from last week. However, the unemployment report came out earlier today and there were 2.4 million new unemployment claims last week, which brings our 9-week total to 38.5 million unemployment claims as of the last 9 weeks. So this is huge. While the number is decreasing, we were seeing in the 3 millions and we had seen at one point 6 million unemployment claims in 1 week. The number of unemployment claims each week has been decreasing, but 2.4 million unemployment claims in 1 week is still massive. It's still huge. Millions of people are losing their jobs every single week, and that is still a very, very large number. And to put that into perspective, in 2008, there was 11.1 million people who were unemployed over the whole financial crisis. That was the whole time. And this week alone, which is our best week in 9 weeks, there's 2.4 million people who filed for unemployment. So we have to keep an eye out on this number. We'll see what happens next week. Moving on, let's talk about a couple of businesses before we get into the second stimulus package. So Macy's said on Thursday that it expects first quarter sales to fall by as much as 45%, and it could report a loss of more than $1 billion as the department store operator was forced to shut down because of the coronavirus. Most retailers right now have been struggling significantly because they've had to shut down their stores and they've had to only rely on online sales. And most companies, majority of their business has been done in person in these retail locations. So this was a huge shift for a lot of companies, and most companies simply lost a lot of revenue. Similar to this, Best Buy reported their earnings earlier today, and they said that their revenue and earnings fell in the first quarter despite the initial surge of shopping at the beginning of the coronavirus as people were prepping their homes, buying internet, buying TVs, buying electronic devices, so then they could prep their homes for staying at home for 2 months. They said even though they had this initial surge of people buying a lot at the very beginning of the coronavirus, it leveled off and it dropped significantly. They still ended up with revenue and earnings declining from the previous quarter. So next up, let's talk about what's happening in Europe and Japan with businesses. It's important to see what's going on in other areas of the world because they started to open up before we did. Japan opened up very early on and they were forced to shut down again. But now Europe and Japan are also open right now. So it's important to see what is going on there because we can look at them as a model for what will happen with us. So anyways, business activity in Europe and Japan continued to decline in May, but at a slower rate. So even though they opened up their economies, business activity is still declining, but just at a slower rate. So that means that we are going to expect a much slower recovery than a lot of people think. Most people expected a V-shape or a W recovery. However, according to what's going on in Europe and Japan and other areas of the world, it's a much slower recovery. People aren't as willing to go outside, go to shopping centers, go and buy stuff in person, and also people aren't making as much money because unemployment rates are through the roof. So as of right now, we can expect probably a slower recovery than most people were initially thinking, and we can look towards what other countries are doing as a model for what will happen here. Next up is nearly 860,000 people traveled to newly opened parts of Maryland and Virginia last weekend. And this is very surprising because it raises fears that lifting restrictions in some rural areas could lead for people in more populated areas to bring the virus from their populated areas to more rural areas. So this could cause a spike in coronavirus cases in rural areas, and this is worrying a lot of health officials because they said maybe we opened up too soon. And an issue that a lot of people are starting to realize is that if you open up the country in some cities, in some states, well then people could just travel to those cities even if where they live it's locked down. I'd mentioned this previously, but that's why it's a little unusual that some states could open up, other states aren't opening up. But ultimately, anyone could just travel wherever they want. They could take a plane to another city, another state, and they could bring the virus from a very highly populated area to a rural area. So that could cause a lot of problems, which is why we may see a resurgence in cases. Not to say we will, but it is more likely if people start traveling. So we just have to keep an eye out for that, and hopefully we don't see an uptick in the number of cases. Next up is with reopening, but we're going to talk about reopening with businesses first. So Ford Motor Company stopped assembly lines at key factories in Chicago and Michigan on Wednesday. They also stopped it on Tuesday as well. This was the second day in a row because of the latest sign of coronavirus cases in their factories. 2 employees tested positive for the coronavirus late on Wednesday. And this was after they came into work Wednesday morning, they were taking their temperature, and they were fine. They said they didn't have any symptoms, they were good. But then later in the day, they showed symptoms and signs of the virus. So this is very scary because you could go to work one morning, have a temperature that's fine, you could pass when they take your temperature, then a couple hours later you have the virus, and now you're working in a factory with thousands of other people in a pretty confined area. So that is very scary for a lot of companies, a lot of workers. So what Ford did is they shut down their factories for the second day in a row, and now companies are starting to realize the serious risk of opening up their doors for production, for employees, for shoppers and consumers too soon, because if they open up too soon and people get the virus and they could trace it back to their company, well then they could be in big trouble. This is one of the reasons why we've talked about business liability protections in a second stimulus package. A lot of Republicans have wanted these business liability protections to protect businesses, whether they're huge corporate companies or small businesses. They don't want what is happening to Ford, where people are getting the virus, to happen to other companies. Because now that people tested positive at the Ford manufacturing factory, if other people who work in that factory get it, they're going to trace it right back to Ford and their company. So this is important news that we have to keep an eye out for. Moving on is that global cases for the virus have passed 5 million total cases on Thursday, according to Johns Hopkins and their data. In the US, there are nearly 1.55 million confirmed infections, and the death toll has passed 93,400 people. According to Johns Hopkins, there's been more than 328,000 people who have died worldwide. And then big news is that all 50 states have opened up. Countries all over the world are opening up. And according to the World Health Organization, they said that more than 100,000 new infections of the virus were reported over the previous 24 hours. This was on Wednesday that they said this. And this is the highest one-day total since the beginning of the outbreak. So this is huge because most countries have started to open up, a lot of countries, and all the states in the US have started to open up. So if we're seeing cases start to increase again, well, this is really huge news. So now we're seeing businesses, people are getting infected when they're going back to business. And now, according to the World Health Organization, there's been the highest one day of new infections since the beginning of the outbreak. So what it's looking like is that really before we can return to normal life completely, is that we need to have a vaccine in place, because no matter what we do, no matter how much social distancing, if we wear masks, we wear gloves, ultimately people are still going to be getting it if they're coming into contact more often with more people. So if people start going out, shopping, going to restaurants, going back to work, you're going to be in contact with more people, and that can lead to an increase in the number of cases. And the only way that this could be solved is with a vaccine. So we'll have to keep an eye out for what happens with the vaccine. But one thing to remember with this is that even when a vaccine does come out, most people aren't going to take it right away. Most people might wait 6 months or even a year after, because they don't want to be the first ones to take the vaccine. They want to make sure it's been tested. A lot of people have used it. They don't want to be like a test rat. A lot of people have been saying in the comments they're not taking a vaccine right away. So ultimately we have to keep an eye out for what's going on there, because if we open up and people get sick again, well, then we're just going to have to shut back down immediately. So we'll see what goes on there. Next up is let's move into the new stimulus check and talk about how likely a second stimulus package is. So as of right now, we all know that the elections are coming up, and those have a big influence on what is happening in the Senate, in the House, what is happening with the vote on a second stimulus package. Because most of the senators and representatives, they're going to be voting with their party lines, and they're going to do what their parties want. Because right now, senators and representatives, they're focused on also winning their election. They don't want to be in risk of losing their seat in the Senate or in the House because they didn't vote on the package. They don't want to risk losing their seat, and how they vote on the second stimulus package can have a major impact on whether they get voted back in or if someone else gets voted in their place. So we'll keep an eye out for that. But what we need to know right now is that the Republicans have 2/3 majority. They have the presidency and they also have the Senate. So right now the Democrats have already proposed the HEROES Act. This is the one-time $1,200 stimulus payment. A lot of you guys have been wanting a recurring payment. I've been seeing that in the comments down below. This probably won't happen. The Republicans have not shown much support for a recurring second stimulus payment. On the other hand, they have talked about tax credits in an additional second stimulus package, more protections for businesses. So there is good news because there is talk about a second stimulus package. It's just there probably won't be a recurring payment because the Republicans want tax credits. Right now they're set to meet after Memorial Day, and I'll let you know what goes on there. But most likely there'll be a second stimulus package with a one-time payment. It could have additional aspects in it like increased unemployment benefits or extended unemployment benefits like what's currently in the HEROES Act. And there also will probably be some tax cuts in there as well, or tax credits where you can get money back. So I'll let you know what happens there, but as of right now, that is what's going on with a second stimulus package. There probably will be another one. We just don't know exactly how much money we'll be getting in it, but most likely it's not going to be a recurring monthly stimulus payment. Moving on, let's get into the PPP loans and what is going on there. The U.S. government has had a lot of complaints over the terms of these loans, how the terms have been changing. They weren't the same from at the start. So with the PPP loans, 75% has to go to payroll expenses, and the other 25% can go to other aspects of your business. However, a lot of people have been concerned about this, and they've been complaining about this. And lawmakers are also frustrated about this as well. The Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer, he said that there's a lack of transparency and unresponsiveness with the SBA. And we could have seen this with the EIDL program because the SBA changed the EIDL loans and grants the amounts that they were allowed to give without anyone else knowing. So this causes a lack of transparency. Now people aren't trusting the SBA as much. The SBA says it has approved 252,340 disaster loans worth nearly $25 billion as of May 17th. But they said they still have a large backlog. It had over 5.4 million applications. So when you think about that, they've only done 250,000 out of 5 million. So they still have a lot more applications to process, but you can still go ahead and apply if you'd like to. So anyways, that is what's going on in the world today. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to get your 2 free stocks valued up to $1,400 when you sign up for the Webull investing app. 1 free stock when you sign up for Robinhood. Don't forget to check out our links down below and join our Power of Finance investors group as well as our Discord group community chat. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like the video down below, leave a comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.